Picking easy ones, yeah.
Picking ones that have been solved already.
Well, he says he solved them. That doesn't mean he actually solved.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
He also has claimed to solve some of our mysteries.
That's true.
That's
and
true.
it's almost always.
Preposterous.
Yeah.
Oh, not so at all. No, these are by their very nature, unfortunately, kind of unsolvable. But you can advance some good theories anyway.
Well, there you go. That's the idea.
It's always fun to turn up some new piece of evidence or some little theory or another. So anyway, this is a mystery that everybody's heard about, and we're talking about the ghost ship Mary Celeste.
Dun dun dun!
I know. So anyway, quick intro here. A little information about the Mary Celeste. She was a brigantine. Brigantine is like a partially square rig, partially gaff rig ship. You guys all know what that means, I'm sure. Yeah. So 107 feet long, 282 tons, and on December 5th, 1872, she was found between the Azores and the coast of Portugal, unmanned and abandoned. She was under sail. She was partially under sail. Not all the sails were up. The lifeboat was gone. The entire crew was gone, and that is the mystery: is what the hell happened to those people?
Huh?
Yeah, how did they get vominosed off that ship?
Yeah, I mean, I guess was it like damaged? It was just like hanging. It was just the ship was just hanging out in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, just drifting along under sail. Apparently, it was being according to the last log entry, which was November 24th. They were at Santa Maria Island in the Azores, also called St. Mary's. And that was their last known entry. And they were found about 700 miles north of there. And it's really cool. I found this out because I found out the longitude and latitude of where the ship was found. And then I found out the longitude and latitude of St. Mary's Island, or Santa Maria. And of course, I go out and I Google it. And of course, there's a web page out there where you can plug in the coordinates of 2 points, and it'll tell you how far apart they are.
Yeah, of course.
And
The joy of the internet.
I know. It'll even pop it up on Google Maps for you. So that was really cool. So using that handy utility, they traveled about 700 miles.
Okay.
So
it had been a while.
Santa Maria. Yeah. So, yeah.
Sure. Okay.
And of course, you never know. Maybe he was just bored with making ship log entries, and he just didn't write in the log for like 7 or 8 days. Seems unlikely.
Yeah.
I thought you were kind of required to make log entries like all the time.
Yeah. That's what they do on Star Trek all the time.
Exactly.
I figured that was
That's
standard
how we
protocol.
have the historic record of Star Trek.
Exactly.
I know. And and besides which, you're at sea, there's not a hell of a lot else to do, so you might as well spend a lot of time doodling in your log.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, let's start from the beginning. The Mary Celeste left New York City on November 5th, 1872, loaded with a cargo of 1,701 barrels of alcohol, which were intended for fortifying wine in Italy. So the destination was Genoa, Italy. And an interesting coincidence is that the night before they sailed, the captain, whose name was Benjamin Briggs, had dinner with his friend David Morehouse. David Morehouse was captain of the Del Gracia, was the ship that discovered the Mary Celeste adrift and abandoned in the Atlantic a month
feel like
later.
I already have a theory about this.
You think murder?
No, not murder, but like quote discovered, like, oh, we found this ship. It was weird. I don't know if there was enough missing. We'll just have to continue.
Yeah,
with that.
let's keep going. But before we go too far, now you said it's, and I remember this in the reading. This is something I always had to have clarified. So it's not drinking alcohol like whiskey. It's denuded alcohol. Is that the correct term?
I've heard two different variants on that. One is that it was like totally undrinkable alcohol that will poison you, like
basically like rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, and
Denatured alcohol.
Denatured. That's the phrase.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and but I've also heard that they were going to use it for fortifying wine. So presumably it would have had to be drinkable, right? If you're going to fortify wine with it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea how that process
I guess
works.
maybe it was undrinkable in its form, but when diluted, maybe it was.
Yeah, and there's
Denatured alcohol is totally just like rubbing alcohol, right? And that like it's 90% alcohol, it will kill you. But ostensibly, I think if you water it down to like crazy low amounts, you could consume it.
Maybe.
I don't know that it would be delicious, but
yeah, probably not. Well, and this stuff, some people have referred to it as undrinkable, but that they might mean not poisonous, but just so strong, so harsh.
Or
it just,
yeah.
But at the same time, especially back in those days, when people wanted to get wasted, hey, we would find a way to do it,
Yeah, so if you think of that like the strongest moonshiniest moonshine you've ever had, right? There's really no flavor. All it is just like alcohol. And yes, you can drink it, but
and it'll get you wasted. Okay, so anyway, the Del Gracia discovered the Mary Celeste sailing without benefit of crew a month later. So she was about 600 miles west of Portugal, sailing apparently toward Gibraltar. She was spotted by the helmsman of the Del Gracia from about 5 miles out. She appeared to be sailing erratically, basically kind of weaving side to side. And so they got closer, and as they got closer, they recognized it as being the Mary Celeste. And they got to a distance of about 400 yards and just sat there for a couple of hours observing through the telescope. And they saw no one on deck, no one at the helm, and they were mighty puzzled, as you can imagine. So the first mate, Oliver DeVoe, went over in a boat and boarded the Mary Celeste and went all through it. Found it to be completely empty, although it was in the hold. And by the way, that must have been a really creepy thing going on board that ship, huh?
Oh, yeah, I can only imagine what it'd be like.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like finding an abandoned car somewhere. You know that somebody should have been in it recently, but now there's nobody.
Or in
here.
abandoned houses, too, are super creepy, right?
Yeah.
Because, you walk through and you're like, boy, there should definitely,
There's signs of people having been here.
Yeah, but there's just no one here.
Yeah, speaking of abandoned cars, I was with a friend and we were out in the hills looking for a good shooting spot. So we pulled into this one spot off the road, and there's a pickup truck there. And we're sort of wondering that it appears to be unoccupied. And so we come walking up to it slowly, and the driver's side door was ajar, and there were a pair of feet sticking out. Somebody.
What? You're making this up.
No, a pair of feet sticking out, shoes. A person laying face down and not moving at all. And we were kind of like, wow, have we just found a body? We get a little closer and then a little closer, and then it starts to move. We look in there, and it's just some freaking redneck who just passed out probably the night before.
He was just so drunk. Oh man.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, that was creepy.
All right.
Okay, so on board they found the ship's log, and of course that's where they got that entry about Santa Maria Island. Surprisingly, they keep saying the word is that the ship's papers were missing.
And I've read that, and that's why I was a little surprised when you said the ship's log, because I thought by the papers, I thought that they meant that the logbook was not there.
Right, that's what I thought too. But
that's what you would think, but no, apparently the log was there, but papers, whatever those papers are, I'm not
sure. What if that's official documents of ownership?
Official documents of ownership, maybe? Shipping
the equivalent
manifest?
of a visa or
I don't
whatever.
know. Yeah.
Oh, shipping manifest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. And they had also taken the sextant and the chronometer. They were missing. The ship's lifeboat was missing. So there were some sensationalized accounts of this. One of the first one was by Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wait, and the entire crew was missing?
Oh, yeah, the crew was missing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought I
also
said that.
Yeah.
And was it just the crew, or was...
Oh, yeah, I should probably say who was on the boat.
Yeah,
so there was a 7-man crew, plus the captain, so that's 8. And then he brought along his wife and his 2-year-old daughter for this voyage, too. So a total of 10 people were on this ship. So anyway, the sensationalized accounts by Arthur Conan Doyle said that when they boarded it, there were warm plates of food and still warm cups of tea sitting on the table
one
in
of
the
those.
galley. Yeah. So, and there was a sword that had blood on it, and in real life there was a sword, but it had rust on it, not blood. That's completely bogus. I mean, they spent 2 hours just observing this boat. That's plenty of time for the tea to cool off. So,
Yeah.
Well, they chased it for a while, so yeah.
Yeah.
And then the blood on the sword thing. There, like you said, there was a sword. Did you ever come across why the accounts say it was a bloody sword? It's because it was covered in red material that didn't obviously look like rust. But it turns out that, and it's I'm assuming that it wasn't obviously rust based on the way that I've read it, but it was the fact that somebody had used lemon juice to clean it, which caused some kind of weird oxidization to happen, and that's why it had these odd blotches of red on it.
That's that's a little, like, that makes it a little weirder, though, to me, that somebody was like, oh, I know, I'll use lemon juice to clean my sword off.
It might have been, the equivalent of an old wives' tale. Dad said, always use a lemon when you're at sea to clean your sword, to keep it clean and keep the salt off of it. I don't know. It would be a good astringent.
Yeah, or maybe they just didn't have a sharp knife at hand and they wanted to cut a lemon, so they cut it with that sword.
It'd be a little awkward, but...
Yeah.
Or perhaps, and this leads to another theory, so perhaps it was a lemon pledge lady. Who murdered them all. Yeah, I know.
All right.
But what was not missing, there was a lot of food and water on board, plenty of food and water. The crew everybody had left their possessions behind, including valuables, things which you would expect they would take with them. So that leads to the suspicion that they left in a big hurry. The peak halyard, which is used to hoist the mainsail, because the mainsail has got that big piece of timber up on top of it to stretch it out, and so that you have to have a fairly stout rope to haul that heavy piece of wood and all that cloth with it. So that was missing apparently, and they found a rope, probably the peak halyard, tied to the stern of the boat, trailing in the water. The other end was frayed. There was no sign of violence on the ship. So that kind of ruled out piracy. We'll talk a little bit about that. But there were no signs of a struggle or anything like that. So they pondered what to do, and they finally decided to, the captain of the Del Gracia sent a small number of men over there to the Mary Celeste to take her the rest of the way to Gibraltar. So they sailed, the two ships sailed together to Gibraltar. And then months later, it spent some time in Gibraltar while they puzzled over it and held a course of inquiry and stuff like that. And then eventually the ship got to Genoa, its original, and they unloaded the cargo. They found that 9 barrels of alcohol were empty out of that whole thing.
And there was, 500 barrels?
1,700 barrels.
1,700?
1,701.
And one.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting number. That's
odd.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's again, and this is one of the hard parts with a story like this that has been retold to make it spookier and spookier. Is I have seen accounts that said it was 400, 500, 700 barrels. So that's one of the things that's always in question for me is how much cargo was this thing really hauling?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm assuming these were not huge barrels either. You know, when you think barrel, you think 55-gallon drum.
Yeah.
So these might have been kind of small barrels.
Little 20, 30-gallon guys.
Yeah, could have been. I'm not, but again, there's a few things I was trying to find out in the course of this whole thing, like the size of the barrels, the size of the lifeboat. That's something I was really curious about, and that's kind of difficult. Yeah, kind of hard to find out. As far as the captain and the crew goes, they were never heard from again, ever.
So mystery solved.
Yeah, exactly. They just disappeared. Okay. Yeah, I know.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody.
That's really obvious. Yeah. So obviously, they either were forced from the ship or they left voluntarily. Since there was no sign of a struggle, they must have gotten off the ship voluntarily. So the question is, why? And that's something that people have been puzzling over for a long, long time. Okay, so here are some theories. Number one theory, pirates. What's the answer?
No.
It's like, wrong. Yeah, no signs of violence, and I doubt that they would have left a bunch of valuable stuff behind.
Well, I was going to say, if nothing else, the pirates are going to take the food and the cargo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the alcohol.
Cargo.
You think they would take
pirates
a bunch
do.
of that stuff. You know, actually, if I were a pirate and if I had enough men, I would take the entire ship.
There's that, too.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that would be an easy one.
Of course, maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's why the 9 barrels were empty. The pirates did murder everybody. They did take the ship, and they drank a lot of booze one night, and all got so drunk they fell overboard.
Yeah. That makes sense.
This is not, pardon the pun, holding water.
Yeah. And then the last one to fall overboard actually got tangled up with the lines for the lifeboat. He went over, he pulled it over with him. That's why the lifeboat's gone.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing the Benny Hill music.
Yeah. All right, next theory. Mutiny. The crew mutinied. They killed the captain and his family and threw them overboard and then took off in a lifeboat. This makes really no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, again, right?
Again,
no signs of struggle.
Yeah,
a crew of 7 mutiny against a captain of one and kill him and his
Yeah,
family?
that wouldn't.
And
There wouldn't
leave all
be a
your
big-
valuables behind.
It wouldn't be a big struggle though. But yeah, I mean, even if that had happened, why would they immediately jump in the lifeboat, miles from anywhere,
Yeah.
and take off? When the ship is more valuable, and the ship is actually going to be a lot safer to be in than a little
Way
dingy lifeboat.
safer, yeah.
So that makes no sense. Next one, drunkenness. In this theory, the crew got wasted on alcohol from those 9 barrels. They killed the captain and his family again, and then took off in the lifeboat again. So same thing.
Yeah,
So
again.
this is just another variant of the same theory as the mutiny
It,
one.
it
Yeah.
tries to explain why they might have mutinied, right?
Yeah, well, and the captain was a very religious man. I know he had
Yeah, he
reservations.
was a non-drinker, and I
yeah,
don't
he was a
think he allowed
non-drinker. He had
alcohol.
reservations about even taking the cargo until somebody told him this is something you can't actually drink or you're not supposed to drink. So it might have been that somebody was testing the sauce and he got upset, and then that's where everything went downhill. 7 super wasted guys and 1 angry captain. We know who wins.
I guess
Yeah,
on the flip
yeah.
side of that, though, you kind of assume that he's a captain of a ship, and I don't really know how this worked, obviously, but in my, fantasy world, you're captain of a ship, and especially if you have a small crew, you've got your crew that's with you, fairly frequently, right? That's kind of how it worked
Yeah,
back there.
yeah.
It wasn't like you just had, I guess
You
we'll
have
just...
random dudes in Shanghai from a
random
waterfront
guys
bar.
away, yeah. So I think, for me, the mutiny thing doesn't really make sense that, I assume at least that these people had been working together for a number of years and that they would have formed close bonds.
And also, there's
that sort of
the whole
thing.
question of why suddenly mutiny, because the voyage wasn't it wasn't like it was taking 6 months longer than it needed to. It's
Yeah.
not like they were out of food and water.
Yeah.
There's no particular reason to mutiny.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I don't really get it. Unless maybe there was some sort of love triangle. Maybe somebody fell in love with the captain's wife and decided to murder the captain and the daughter, and then had to murder the other crewmen, and then he fell overboard himself because he was drunk. So anyway,
None of them really hold
I
Yeah,
water.
again, this still
No.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, it really doesn't. So another theory is that they abandoned the ship prematurely, believing that it was sinking, or otherwise in some sort of deadly condition.
Well, and you
So-
said it had 3.5 foot of water in the hold?
Yeah, the question is at the time that they left the ship, did it have that much water in it, or because they left a couple of large hatches topside open, and they were open for 10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 10 days.
Or
And so,
up to 10 days
and
from the
they-
last log entry.
Yeah, and so if they had left those open,
It could have gotten
a
in.
fair amount of water could have
Yeah.
come in from rain also, and also, ships like that tend to take on a little bit of water naturally anyhow, and that's why they have bilge pumps so you can pump them out regularly. And if they hadn't been on board for 10 days, then it could have just been, seepage.
Well, and I read somewhere, and I don't know if you were able to verify this at all, that the ship supposedly had 2 pumps, and one of the pumps wasn't working
Yeah.
correctly. So they couldn't siphon the water out at the rate that they should normally be able to.
But
But-
it's still not a good reason to abandon ship.
No,
because,
no.
Yeah.
No, that's like saying my airplane that has 4 engines on it, one of them has gone out. Quick, everybody get your parachute.
Yeah.
It's kind of that
Yeah,
saying,
not quite.
well, no, this
It's-
thing's still going to go.
It's,
Uh-huh.
I
just
think
gonna be
it's
slow.
It's almost worse than that. I mean, it's a parachute down. You have a fairly high rate of, at least making it safe down. The thing of abandoning a ship, that I say this a lot. I'm obviously an expert at
Of course.
maritime anything.
That's why you should actually be handling all of our maritime
I should be.
mysteries,
You're right,
yeah.
but I do know, having lived on a ship for a while, that it is the last thing you do is abandon ship.
Yeah.
Because even on the where we were with a lot of people, and you have your radios and everything, your rate of survival in a lifeboat is just so much lower. I mean, it's maybe 10% of what you get on a ship. There's no reason to abandon a ship.
Yeah.
Because one of your pumps might be broken, to do something that you can do with buckets and manual labor.
Absolutely, yeah. And if they truly had abandoned the ship 10 days before, and that means nobody on board that thing was doing any pumping whatsoever, and it still didn't have a critical amount of water in the bill. wasn't going down.
Yeah, I remember that being an odd fact.
Yeah, but anyway, under this abandonment thing, they thought that the ship was sinking, and so they abandoned ship. They were still pretty close to Santa Maria Island, and so they decided to get in the lifeboat and head and sail to Santa Maria. But that again makes no sense because the ship is nowhere near sinking. Even if you think it's taking on more water than it should, I would turn the ship around first.
Yeah.
And by the way, I didn't mention this, but the captain Benjamin Briggs owned a partial interest in the ship.
So it's not like he would have just abandoned, so he partially owned it.
Yeah.
So he's going to lose his investment if he just lets her go down.
Oh yeah. So he's he's got an interest in keeping his ship afloat. And also I think when you're a sea captain, you don't want to develop a reputation as somebody who loses ships.
You really don't. It's a bad career move.
And I think it only takes one loss of a ship, right?
To really kind of queer the deal.
Yeah, I think you lose one ship and people are like, no, you lose ships.
Yeah, I mean there are people out there in history who've gotten